Do you feel like your podcast episodes are getting lost in the feed of your podcast, or you're posting and not seeing it go where you want it to go? Well, today we are solving that problem because we are talking all about SEO for podcasters, how to boost visibility and repurpose your podcast like a pro. My guest today is Samantha of SJ Digital Solutions. She is here to talk all about how SEO could take your podcast from buried to binge-worthy. Make sure you're taking notes on this episode and then actually put it into practice, because SEO is one of the best ways to get your podcast seen by more people. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome to the Podcast Café, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Samantha, thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. We're talking about all things SEO, and I could not be more excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so since we are in the Podcast Cafe, I have a very important question to ask you. What is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, I love a grande frappuccino, the caramel ribbon crunch ones. They're my absolute favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really good. Honestly, like a frappuccino is just, it can never go wrong.
I'm one of those people who will still have cold coffee in the winter, so.
I'm the same way. I feel crazy. So I'm here in Seattle and I went to a coffee shop yesterday. It's like freezing outside. I was like, would you kill me if I ordered an iced coffee? And she was like, no, but are you okay?
That's funny. I've gotten the same thing.
Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get into today's topic. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so I run a digital marketing agency called SJ Digital Solutions, where we really focus on implementing visibility and automated lead gen marketing strategies for our clients, which looks like SEO, copywriting, email marketing, all that fun stuff, to really be able to pull our clients away from the hustle of social media and paid ads so they can have that freedom that everybody goes into business wanting. And I kind of got into that by running a second company. And that was actually my first company. It was called How to Fire, all about financial independence and early retirement. It was a blog, so a little bit different than what I'm doing now. But the premise of it was to write content and bring people to the website so they could learn about finance. And that's really how I got into SEO. And back in 2019, I quit my corporate finance job to actually, I thought I was going to run How to Fire full time. But like, as you're pivoting from a corporate job to entrepreneurship, you got to bring in some dough to like let yourself live with it. So I started freelancing, and it actually turned out that I ended up working more on, the freelancing, and then it turned into this agency, and I do that more now than I've ever really worked on How to Fire. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, I know. It's always cool to see how, our businesses transform as we go. I started off having a wrestling podcast and I now work in the business space. So similar to you, it's just like, it's so funny how we think we might go one way and then it's completely different as, we start doing it. But, SEO, can you give us a breakdown of what it is? And then we're going to talk about specifically for podcasters, like why podcasters need to understand like the basis of SEO. But why don't we just start off with like, what is SEO?
Yeah, so at the most basic level, it's how to get people to find you on Google or other search engines like Bing. And there's specific strategies like words and technical pieces on the back end of your website that get worked on or tweaked to bring you that visibility so Google is happy and wants to show you to anybody who's searching.
Yeah, yeah. SEO is kind of one of those things where I think a lot of people like mystify it, where they're like, oh, words will get me found, but it really does make a difference. And I
Yeah.
mean, for podcasts specifically, we have so many opportunities for this, even though we are, a verbal type of platform. We have show notes, we have the title. I see so many people make mistakes with their titles that, we'll chat about that. But it's so important to be able to explain what the episode is about without having someone need to dive into like the first 15 minutes to understand, oh, this is what they're talking about. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah.
why should podcasters specifically care about SEO?
Yeah, I think podcasting is very much like social media or content marketing, and that the goal is visibility and ultimately sales.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going to get visibility from podcasting, why not use all of that same content to also get visibility from, SEO, your website? Just kind
Yeah.
of like hitting two birds with one stone.
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot of big podcasts do is they title the episode just the name of the guest. And so smaller podcasts will do the same thing. But the difference here is those bigger names have SEO attached to them, right? Those are things that people are searching for. So if it's like Amy Schumer was just on Call Her Daddy, okay, she's going to say Amy Schumer in the title. But if you have your local coffee shop owner on your podcast and use their name, it doesn't hold the same impact. And so, can you break down that a little bit for us? Let's talk about the titles of podcasts first.
Yeah, I think the putting your guest name in the title is very interesting because yes, you're going to rank for their name, but the odds of them searching for your guest and trying to find your services is very like slim to none. They're trying to learn everything they can about that person. So I think it can like in a weird way like bring you visibility, but not for the right ways.
Hmm.
And I also think that I've seen a lot of podcast episode titles that are just way too long. I think a few things that I keep in mind when I work with podcasters on developing titles for show notes are to keep it like have the keyword in the title, and we can I guess dive into like what that looks like, but and then also to keep it short and punchy so that when it's found in Google that people are they're like captivated and they want to click on it and read your show notes, your blog, whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think even when searching in like Spotify or Apple Podcasts for episodes, like I've told this story on the podcast before, but I am a runner now. I don't know how it happened, but one day I was like, I'm just going to start running.
That's awesome.
And so I'm training for a marathon. And one of the things that it's like, I want to learn more about the nutrition side of marathon running, how to actually, not pull a muscle while I'm marathon running. So these are things that I've been typing into Spotify, which is like my ideal listening platform, and episodes come up, right? But if you title your episode something so off topic or that makes no sense, it's not going to pull up when someone is searching. So you mentioned keywords. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so they're like pretty much the most important part of SEO. And what they are is what somebody is actually physically typing into the search bar when they're looking for something. They need a solution, they need a question answered. And the way that I personally find keywords is I use Ahrefs, and I know there's like a lot of keyword research tools out there, but that's my go-to. And I kind of just like look for topics of what people could be searching for, and once I like find like a list of things that could be relevant, I'll look at, how many people are searching for that each month and how difficult is it to rank? Meaning, are there big conglomerates on page one like Amazon and Reddit and Pinterest and all of those, or is there other smaller businesses like your own that are ranking, which means that you can also rank?
Yeah. What was that website again?
Ahrefs, it's Ahrefs.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. But That's a really great tip. And so once we have that information, like let's say, this episode, for instance, is all about SEO for podcasters. When I'm writing the show notes or titling it, can you walk us through what to do? And then I'm going to steal this for when I do it.
Definitely, absolutely. So basically, how I want everyone to start approaching their show notes is instead of just a recap of what you spoke about, you want to make it into a blog post instead, meaning that it is the most comprehensive piece of content on that topic out there. And the way I would approach that is by, first let's just say we have the keyword. I would look on the first page of Google for that keyword and see what is everybody else who's ranking talking about for this term. Not so you can take inspiration, but just so you can make your piece of content more comprehensive and more valuable than theirs. So I would kind of look at that as my research phase and then lay out the headers of the post. And, you fill in the body copy, you make sure that every question that could possibly be answered about that topic is answered. And then I would look at the podcast as a way to add value to that post. And what I mean by that is, at the top, you could put bullet points of, what we talked about in this episode. You can do your embed for the audio. And that's actually something that Google is putting a lot of favoritism towards nowadays is what value can you add? And that can look like audio or custom graphics or, examples like personal experience. So if you approach it like blog first and podcast as value add second, that's going to really help you rank.
Okay, that's a really great like tactical tip. And so you mentioned blogs, which makes me think, what are beyond just show notes, where are the different places that we can utilize this to like benefit us in SEO? A lot of the listeners and a lot of who I work with are business owners. So like we were saying, they want their podcast to make their business money, right? Whether that be clients or whatever it is. So how can we repurpose to really optimize how many places this is being seen?
Yeah, I think my go-to is email marketing. I always recommend having some kind of lead gen box in your show notes or your blog posts. Maybe it's like a freebie, like a free download, because people aren't really opting into, hey, join my email list anymore. So if you have boxes that they can opt into for a lead magnet within each show notes, then you have their contact information every time an episode drops. You can send out a little blurb and link to listen every week or however often that you publish your show notes or schedule your episodes.
Yeah. And then also when we put it on our website, I guess if you write your show notes like a blog post already, it's easy to just put it on there, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so easy. Like once you take the time to kind of develop the full blog post, the amount of repurposing you can do, like you could take each section and make it a social media post or an email. And it's just like the possibilities are endless. You could even go on Pinterest with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've heard Pinterest is great for podcasting. I haven't dabbled in that, but I've heard that it is a really great place for pretty much any type of podcast, right?
Yeah, I've seen some people have a lot of success with it. I definitely think it's its own beast for sure.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like I feel like every piece of marketing, it's just like this whole new language you have to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. No, it is really interesting the different ways that once you, because it doesn't sound like it's a hard change for podcasters to make, right? Like it doesn't seem like it's going to be this whole overhaul of how they're doing their show notes unless they are not doing them at all, right? It's just kind of changing it to make it better and more readable and more findable for people.
Yeah, more comprehensive. I definitely could see it taking longer than just, I've even seen people throw like the transcript of the episode in ChatGPT and say, hey,
Yeah.
give me some bullet points. It'll definitely take more time than that. But I think the ROI is like tenfold. Like just putting in that time, you're going to see better results than just throwing up some bullet points.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about, AI's role in this, because that is, what everyone's curious about. And I do think a lot of people probably write their show notes with the help of AI. Do you think that's a good idea, or what is your opinion with AI like ChatGPT in this?
This is definitely the hot topic in the SEO
Yeah.
world. I've heard everybody say that AI is making like killing SEO and all of these other things, and that's just really not true. I think personally, I don't use AI to write any of my content. I'll use it to like spark creativity or ideas or and stuff like that, but Google's really looking for that personal experience now, and it wants to see that you're adding value and even talking from like a personal point of view. And that's just not something that an AI tool can generate currently.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has its place to be an assistant, but at the end of the day, if you're going to make a blog, just do it the right way from the
Exactly.
yeah. And I've heard people say that, SEO is going away because of AI, because of the snippets that come up at the top. Like when you type in a question, it'll come up with an answer. But the question I've been asking people is how many times do you actually trust that answer or scroll down to find a real person to, I guess, reaffirm that answer that you got from
Mm-hmm.
AI?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And so, one thing you just mentioned that I want to go back to, do you think that instead of bullet points, people should write paragraphs? Do you think that's better for SEO in terms of podcasting?
I think having a variety of like different formatted pieces within the post is good. So I
Yeah.
think if it was just like a summary of like bullet points for the episode, you could do some bullet points and put that at the top. But then the rest of your post should be written out long form content.
I love that. Because that's also going to help when you do post it on social media, like TikTok or Instagram or whatever pops up next. I mean, I don't really post on TikTok,
Mhm.
but I do find out a ton of like recipes or like questions I have through like the SEO of TikTok. So I guess that's a good way for anyone who's like, I can't really figure out like what SEO means. When you search something on TikTok and everything that you want shows up, that's SEO, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, I love that. So, do you have any other tips for podcasters when trying to like figure out this world of SEO?
I think something I've been encouraging I have like podcast manager partners and then also podcast clients. I've been encouraging them to create their episodes from a place of SEO at the very beginning. So instead of, oh, I have this idea, let's record it and then go back to the SEO, and then you're kind of trying to find if there is a keyword out there that even makes sense to target. And many times it doesn't work out the way you want it to. So what I recommend is doing like some keyword research at the forefront inside your niche, whether that be questions or broader topics, and using that to come up with your topic ideas first, because then you're just set up for this new flow of visibility from multiple platforms.
I love that because that also helps with your strategy for anyone who's like, how do I know what I'm going to talk about next week? That is a great way to really like tap into
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah.
Well, these has been really great tips. Thank you so much for sharing. Before we get into my rapid fire section, where can people come and connect with you like to learn more? I know that you have a couple free resources, right? And then you also have a great optimized website too.
You can go to our website at sjdigitalsolutions.com, and then on there we have a free SEO checklist that would be really helpful if you want to get your own website optimized. And then we're on all major social media platforms at SJ Digital Solutions.
Okay, perfect. I'll put all of those in the show notes. One more thing before we get into the rapid fire section. Before we press record, I was telling you how like I don't really post my podcast episodes on my website, and I need to, right? I want you to tell us a little bit about like the benefits of doing that. But one of the things for me is like on my other podcast, I have 133 episodes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get it all up there? So
Mhm.
that's holding me back. So I want the listeners to learn from my mistakes of start sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so I think as far as the 130 episodes, I think you could probably throw all of the titles into like a Google Sheet, let's say,
Hmm.
and then go line by line and do some keyword research to find like a related topic. Even if it's not exact, you can probably find a keyword that you can make work, and then just put your episode top, like what you talked about in that episode, as like a spin on that keyword. So that's how I would start. And then it's going to be, rewriting the show notes to be more of a blog. And it definitely takes a while. On How to Fire, we've gone through seasons where we have to go through and rewrite everything. And it's definitely a lot of work. But even just doing, let's just say like bi-weekly, if you check your Google Analytics every month, you're going to start seeing little blips of traffic, and that'll just like motivate you to keep going and keep updating.
I love that. Okay. Great tip. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So let's get into my rapid fire section. I have a couple questions for you. Whatever comes to mind is the right answer. So my first one is, what is the first podcast that you listened to or had an impact on your life?
Choose FI.
Okay. I could see that. What is your favorite genre of podcast to listen to?
Business all day.
Yeah. Do you have any top business podcasts you recommend?
Gonna call out my previous business coach, Kate Perkovic, and her Ambitious podcast. I love it to death.
Yeah. Kate, her episode is going to be up on this podcast too. She's still my business coach. I love working with her. She's just like,
she's amazing.
Yeah, she is amazing. She's really good. Yeah. Do you have any big pet peeves when it comes to being a podcast listener?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I think ads that have nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Like a true crime podcast with like a HelloFresh ad. I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. No, that's funny. That's one of mine as well. Yeah. And then what is maybe the best advice you could give to a podcaster in terms of, the conversation that we had today?
That's a good one. I think look at your podcast as more than just a to-do list, like checking off you recorded, you edited, you posted. What's like the intention behind what you're doing? And for most people that I talk to, it's visibility and automated lead gen. So personally, I'm more of a person who goes for quality over quantity. So if you can only do, let's say, bi-weekly or monthly podcasts, but they are like awesome and they're optimized for various marketing strategies, I think that's the way you should go.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great advice. Before we wrap up, I want to ask one more thing about transcripts. One thing I know a lot of podcasters are curious about is transcripts and how they can use them to benefit what they're doing. What do you think? How can transcripts, are they important? Should they be utilized, or is it kind of just like a nice to have?
I think if you have an SEO optimized post that's comprehensive, like we talked about, I think the transcript becomes less important. But I think if you are going to include it, don't just like copy and paste it. I know a lot of website platforms out there, like even I use WordPress mainly, and they have little toggle fields where you can make it so it doesn't all just word vomit there. You can like toggle it on and off. So I would say if you're going to post it, do that.
Yeah. Do you think it needs to be cleaned up? I think it's so hard because the way that we talk and the way that we write are so different. But do you think it should be cleaned up before posted?
Personally, I would, but that might just be my type A personality. I don't think even if we're speaking about SEO, I don't think it's probably as important to clean it up unless there's industry words that are misspelled or something, because when Google crawls, or in other words, looks at your content, it would scan that transcript. And if, let's say, that SEO was spelled like CEO or something, like that could mess up what Google understands the post to be about.
Interesting. Okay. I have one client who his transcript always it says a bad word every time he says this one word. And so I always clean it up. But I'm like, if I didn't, that would be crazy. I don't know where his podcast would end up, but it wouldn't end up where it's like meant to be. And so totally, that's a good tip of maybe just like cleaning up the keywords or, utilizing it in that way. And then just trying to see where it goes from there. I know that Apple Podcasts now does automatic transcripts when you post your podcast. You can go in and clean it up through Apple Podcast Connect, but it will automatically pull it regardless of if you do it or not. And then, of course, YouTube does the same, where it'll transcribe your podcast as long as you select the language. And then that's supposed to help with, you know, people being able to listen more and all of that. Is the YouTube analytics different? Like the SEO on YouTube, is that different, would you say? Is that, or do you think that the practices that you mentioned earlier are going to help with YouTube as well?
I think YouTube SEO is definitely different. Like when you look at people who drive a lot of traffic on YouTube, like their descriptions aren't as long as blogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more about just optimizing the space that you have without sounding keyword stuffy, if that's even a word.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the phrase that they use? Keyword farming or something like that? Or maybe it is keyword stuffing. Yeah. It's like, you definitely know when that's happening in certain contexts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And AI does that all the time. If you can even spot it a mile away.
For sure. For sure. Oh my gosh, Samantha, this has been so much fun and very informative. I know that my listeners are going to take away a lot from this conversation, just because sometimes if they don't have like a producer working on their show, it's kind of hard to know what to do. So I think this is going to be really, really helpful. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I think I'm excited to just see all the SEO optimized show notes out there.
Yes, send them to us. When you do it, when you listen to this episode, make sure you send it to Sam and myself, and we will, cheer you on.
Definitely.
Thanks so much for being my guest. I really loved this conversation.
I did too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production, or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.